All right, at this time, we'll call this meeting to order. Val, please call the roll.
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. At this time, please silence any cell phones that you may have or any electronic devices that make noise. I'd ask you all to please stand for a short invocation and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today to pray and give thanks to your name, dear God. We pray for this country that we live in, the United States of America. Dear God, please deliver us from this virus. Keep us safe. Please keep all of the first responders safe, dear God, and all of our employees. Help us to make the right decisions up here today, and we give thanks to your Son, Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and open this up to public participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the commission today? See, okay, Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Heller, 460 Ridgewood Avenue. Thank you very much for coming here, but not under these circumstances. I'm just hoping that Mr. Antoine has topped off all the chemicals needed for water and sewage. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission today? Seeing none, we'll close public participation, and we're going to move down to declaring a local state of emergency. Joe?
All right, the way we put this together was as an emergency ordinance with one reading. I spoke to Scott. Typically, we do these by resolutions. Ormond Beach did it by ordinance. It's an ordinance that will present for as an emergency ordinance. It does not have to be codified like our other ordinances typically do. So I'll go ahead and read it into the record. We can go through any of the specific points within it as part of your discussion. And then at the end, I have some other items that I think we should talk about in addition to this ordinance. So the item is declaring a local state of emergency ordinance 2020-03025 for first and only reading. An ordinance recognizing the declaration of a public health emergency issued by the governor of the state of Florida, effective throughout the state of Florida, including Volusia County and the municipalities situated therein, recognizing a declaration of local state of emergency issued by Volusia County and being effective throughout Volusia County, including the municipalities situated therein, declaring a local state of emergency in the city of Holly Hill, authorizing the exercise of emergency management procedures in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Holly Hill and members of the general public, and setting forth an effective date. This ordinance is an emergency ordinance and is presented for first and only reading.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions for staff from the commission? Seeing none, we'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item on declaring a local state of emergency? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion needed? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. A couple other items to talk about. Joe and I, we discussed earlier about disconnecting utilities. Joe, could you speak on that for a minute?
Yeah, I have a number of things I'll run down and go over with you during this local state of emergency. Some of it I've already sent you in email communications that we've talked about before. For example, the schools are closed this week for spring break, and they're closed next week as a result of the local state of emergency. We're not allowing children to come to work. If there's a parent, an employee that needs to stay home with their child, they're going to have to use their accrued leave to do that. With the sick leave, we had agreed that if an employee is out because they are either sick, whether it's for any other unrelated matter, they would use their sick leave or accrued time. If somebody does have the COVID-19 virus, we decided that if they ran out of time, they didn't have any time on the books, that we would front them up to 40 hours that they would have to pay back. There are some cities that are adopting a policy that says if you are an employee that's got confirmed COVID-19, that those agencies are giving those employees up to 14 days off without having to use their accrued time. I haven't had a chance to get through all of the details with what the federal government is doing in terms of the presidential national declaration. I don't know how that gets reimbursed yet. Typically, the private sector will try to get reimbursed through the federal government or through tax credits. Generally, the city files under Category B through Florida Department of Emergency Management, basically going through FEMA, that if we spent money paying employees to be out because of the COVID-19 virus, or we made purchases for equipment, or we had to bring in additional staff because somebody was out and we had to cover overtime for that, we've got to go through that same FEMA reimbursement process. So I haven't figured all that out yet. There's so much documentation that's coming in that it's overwhelming and inundating the amount of information that's coming in. So at this time, our administrative policy is that people will use their accrued leave, and if they don't have leave, we will allow them to go negative up to 40 hours that they would then reimburse the city for. The standard was not to attend meetings in excess of 250 people. That's been reduced to 100. Today, that was reduced to 50. And now, from what I understand, Commissioner Curry just informed me that she believes that number has been reduced further to 10. If that is in fact the case,
I heard it on the radio. The president was speaking
okay.
20 minutes ago.
Really? If
Yeah.
that's the case,
They just did a White House briefing.
then we should cancel all of our events at Seca Hall and all our events at the clubhouse, because those will have gatherings of at least 10 people in some of those cases. So we'll go ahead and make that change. We will, like we do during a hurricane disaster, is we will not turn water off, and we'll do that through the month of April. We will require that all late fees and penalties be applied at the time that people who may not be paying now, they will have to pay that when that comes about. I'll tell you that the city of Ormond Beach made a comment that they would look at that on a case-by-case basis. If somebody that is claiming a COVID-19 hardship, they'll evaluate that on a case-by-case basis as to determine as to whether or not they would waive those late fees and penalties. If for some reason the city operations come to a stop, or we refuse the public from coming into the building, the city staff will continue to come to work. We will clean our workspaces, we'll sanitize wherever we possibly can, we'll catch up on work that needs to be done, but we're not going to just shut operations down for people to go home unless it reaches to that level. We talked about the opportunity for telecommuting. There are only a certain number of employees that have the ability to telecommute, meaning doing their work from home. Scott, he's not in here. Scott said that he has the ability to set some people up for that. There's not a lot of people that can do that. You know, I'm sure some folks in the finance department, HR, IT, there are some employees that can do that. And my concern with those scenarios is the fairness factor. While you've got certain employees that are allowed to work from home and be compensated, and others that will go home and not be able to work from home and lose time. So I try to keep that playing field level and not allow telecommunicating unless absolutely necessary. And what I mean by that is, and I'll use my finance director as an example, if my finance director comes down with COVID-19 and I've got to keep her out of the office for 2 weeks, I may need to compensate her to work from home. Mm-hmm. That's a specific example of it's easier for me to to compensate her to do some work from home than to say, stay home for 2 weeks and don't do anything, and that sets us very far behind. So that's kind of an example of that. With the public restrooms, at this time, my concern is shutting the public restrooms. The other cities are not closing their public restrooms. We might limit the number of public restrooms that we keep open to one male and one female in the parks that have multiples so that they can be cleaned. My concern is if we close all the public restrooms, where are the people going to go that use it? And if I close them, they're going to use the streets or the parks. So I'm a little bit concerned with that. The parks in general will remain open. Many people are going to want the fresh air to be out and be able to at least be in the sunshine for a little bit. So I don't anticipate that we'll be closing the parks, but again, that's going to be subject to what happens around us and what the conditions are. I'm going to encourage people to not come to City Hall. There are many ways that you can pay your utility bill, and if you can pay it online or drop a payment in the mailbox, that's what we're going to encourage people to do to try to avoid contact within the city. Each department employee is working to keep their workstations clean. I've asked them, you saw the email, to try to keep their desk areas clean and keep them wiped down as often as possible. We have two areas that are visited most by the public. One is the utility billing area, and those employees are behind glass, and they do come out and they wipe that area down periodically throughout the day. The other area is in the planning department, where the employee behind the desk is open and exposed to people coming in. And I gave her the option last week of operating in the utility billing department behind the glass, and I know that's not something that she's really super excited about. And at this time, we'll leave things the way they are, but if it looks like the cases in Volusia County are increasing, I may go ahead and shut that office down and ask the planning tech to work out of the utility billing department and stay behind the glass. So I only have one point of contact where the people are coming into City Hall, and it'll lessen the areas where we need to sanitize and keep clean. With that, I think that that's all I have to report or talk about, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Couple things. We briefly spoke about canceling the next commission meeting on March 24th. Now, in light of the fact that there can't be more than 10 people gathering, can you go over everything that's on that agenda?
The only thing that's on that agenda right now, you have the minutes of the previous meeting. We have a memorandum of understanding for a software program from the police department. It's called Elvis. It typically, I think that was a piggyback MOU with, and I want to say Panama City, and now that's been moved over to Tallahassee, so we're going to piggyback that memorandum of understanding from Tallahassee. That's not time sensitive. And the other item that was on that list is the Water Conservation Month proclamation. So we have two non-essential items that are on the agenda for that meeting, and they can certainly be delayed if you'd like to cancel that meeting.
All right, and we can discuss that, but there was also a resolution passed in New Smyrna Beach yesterday, or I guess today, about remote attendance of commissioners. If, for instance, what they're looking at is we're not allowed to call in necessarily to make a quorum, but since it's a state of emergency, if 3 of us come down with the coronavirus and can't be here, it may be prudent to be able to pass a resolution like New Smyrna did, which would allow us to make a quorum by calling in and you could only do it if you were, tested positive for coronavirus, to be able to make that quorum in case we needed to make a decision quickly. Joe and I talked a little bit about it, and you're not sure about the legality of it.
I'm not sure about the legality of it. When it came up on my conference call last week out of the city of New Smyrna Beach, I kind of questioned it, and their response was, well, it came from our city attorney, and I thought, well, all right. But the communication that I've read was that a public meeting still has to remain public, and you have to have a quorum present in order to effectuate that meeting. I don't have a problem, Mayor, if you want to read this. I don't have a resolution prepared. I can read this into the record in Holly Hill format for you to open to the public and take action on, and then I'll just write it, and we'll have it signed this afternoon, that if in the case you need to do a telecommunicating commission meeting, at least you'll have a resolution in place if you need to. If it's not legal or you can't, then we'll set it aside.
And it would only be during the state of emergency, as I understand it. And I talked to the mayor of New Smyrna, and I questioned the legality of it, and he said, look, common sense has to win out sometimes, and if there's a decision that comes up in an emergency situation and, you know, 3 of us have it or whatnot, then, you know, it's prudent to do that and then, you know, fight the legality of it at a later time, and hopefully common sense will win out. So I would be interested in hearing you read through the resolution, and then we can discuss it, see if we want to pass it today.
Okay. A resolution of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, approving the remote attendance of a member of the City Commission for any City Commission meeting scheduled during the existing state of emergency due to COVID-19 and providing an effective date. Whereas on March 9th, 2020, Governor Ron DeSantis passed Executive Order Number 20-52 declaring a state of emergency throughout the state of Florida due to COVID-19. And whereas COVID-19 is a severe acute respiratory illness that is rapidly spreading throughout the world, and whereas 8 counties in Florida have presumptive positive cases of COVID-19, including Volusia County with at least 3. Whereas it may be necessary for a member of the City Commission to self-quarantine in order to prevent the spread of this illness, and whereas a member of the City Commission should be able to attend fully participate in the City Commission meetings scheduled during this state of emergency by telephone or other appropriate electronic means to help mitigate the spread of the illness in this community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Holly Hill, Florida. Section 1, the City Commission finds that the existing state of emergency due to COVID-19 is an extraordinary circumstance and approves an individual commissioner member's request to attend and participate in the City Commission's meeting by telephone or other appropriate electronic means because of a need to self-quarantine as a result of COVID-19 as necessary during this declared state of emergency. I know I have a page 2 here.
There wasn't a page 2 on it?
It goes to page 2, but for whatever reason, I'm not pulling it up, so I'll just pull it off my email.
Okay.
All right, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption and shall expire on the same date as the Executive Order Number 20-25.
All right.
That is the resolution.
Thank you, Joe. Would you guys like to discuss it first? And does anybody have any questions about it?
Any questions? No.
John, you look puzzled.
No, it makes common sense, but I don't think it's gonna pass the legal threshold, so.
And that's, would be my issue. It is common sense, and I don't mind going
Historically,
forward with it. However, if we find out from Mr. Simpson that it is not legal, then I would like it to
historically, when this has come up, we've always been told that a commissioner needs to be present during a public meeting because you never know if a commissioner is being coerced at home on voting on a certain item. That's always been what's been explained to me. Hopefully, we won't get there. Again, you've got those 2 items on your agenda for the next meeting on March 24th. If you'd like to keep that meeting, we certainly can. If you'd like to postpone or cancel that meeting until...
Well, first though, speaking of this remote attendance, there's no harm in passing this today and then sending it to Scott, and then if Scott doesn't believe that
No,
it'll...
we can pass it, and if it's not valid,
then we
we'll-
just won't call for a telecommuted.
Right, and
needed.
hopefully, none of you will need it.
Right, correct.
So,
Hopefully. So I'd look for a motion to pass that resolution as read.
Go ahead, yeah. So moved.
Motion. We have a motion. Is there a second?
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Yes, Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Heller, 460 Ridgewood, and this is what I do. But at first you mentioned 20-52 for the executive order, and then you mentioned 20-25.
Hold on a second, I might have dyslexied that.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
20-52,
And then 2025 at the end.
no, 20-52 are both.
20-52,
So
executive order. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. Any discussion needed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now, is there anyone opposed to canceling the meeting on March 24th due to the new guidelines?
I'm not, no.
Okay. All right, Joe, we're going to go ahead and cancel that meeting. If something time-sensitive comes up, please let me know, and then we'll discuss if we need to call that. It's going to be tough, though, if there's only 10 people allowed. How are we going to be able to have a commission meeting? I mean, you know, we're 7 people just sitting
Then I
here.
would say the first 10 people in the meeting stay, and everybody else doesn't. You know, I'll limit my staff's participation. They really
There's
don't
9 of
need
us
to
up
be
here.
I think I'd rather.
There's
just
9 of us up
cancel
here.
a
It's
meeting.
5, 6, 7, and then usually
I would rather
Scott's here.
cancel a meeting than keep people from the meeting.
Yeah, then it's not a
talking
public
about the
meeting.
following-
I am not going to go
insane.
for that.
Not the next meeting we just canceled. You talking about the following meeting?
No, this meeting, the March 24th, next
We
Tuesday.
we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know
Right.
how severe it's going to get. And I will tell you that, even in my frustration on these conference calls, we're not consistent in what each of the cities are doing.
Yeah.
So it's all going to be kind of play it by ear and see what the conditions are and then deal with it as we have facts.
And it's very fluid, too.
It's very fluid. So the state of emergency that you pass gives me a certain amount of flexibility in what I can or can't do. And like I said, I've been through a lot of these emergency declarations, haven't had a pandemic under my belt yet. But we'll take it one day at a time, and we'll make the necessary changes that we need to keep the public as safe as we possibly can and keep our employees as safe as we possibly can.
Question for you that I hope you can answer. If not, we have Deputy Chief Miller and Chief Bland here. But when our first responders come in contact with someone that has symptoms, is that documented and then traced back to the state to see if those people are being watched already, or?
Well, I'll have to ask the chief to answer that part of it, but from a response perspective, the nurse dispatchers, while they're on duty, are asking additional questions of the people that are calling 911, and based on that criteria, the first responders, although they're well protected with their personal protective equipment that they're supposed to be wearing, they'll be able to make better decisions. I know some agencies where the fire department is not responding to these types of calls, which puts the burden solely on the transport agency to have to deal with. But I know that, was there a call with Springer today? Yeah. If you can give us an update on that, I didn't sit in on that call, but the medical director had a conference call with the chiefs today, and you'll hear it at the same
Great.
time I did.
Chief Bland?
Chief Bland Fire Department. Yeah, we had a conference call with our medical director as well as Volusia County Health Department. The way it works right now is that they're looking at right now we have a nurse triage contingent out at the dispatch. When a call comes in, they run through their list of questions, and that either will or will not get a full response depending on how they answer those questions. So they're looking at expanding that program. Right now it's 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. They're looking to extend the hours of that program to make it more efficient for us in the field. I don't feel like we should be responding to flu calls in a 2-tiered system. If they're wanting transport, only the transport unit could go. It's a non-emergent call that in any other time would only get that single unit, but in this time it's getting a 2-unit response. So we're looking at fixing that tomorrow.
And that's a pre-existing
That's a
response that
pre-existing
we've already
response.
had.
Yeah, if you call in with general illness, if you called in February with general illness and you want to transport to the hospital, you would have only gotten the ambulance. But since they've hurt themselves by asking too many questions, because one of the questions they're now asking when trying to figure out if you've got the coronavirus is if you're short of breath. If you're short of breath, then
Yeah.
it triggers another card that says this is a different type
right.
of response, which now gets a fire response as well. So we're looking at fixing that tomorrow. If we do go, so over the weekend, yesterday, we had a call on Espanola that was a possible coronavirus patient due to her granddaughter supposedly having a positive test. Turns out this lady just wanted to go get tested for no reason other than just to be tested. We will get notified we get notified on the front end if they've been tested by the state of Florida. So you have private labs testing. If the test goes to Quest or LabCorp, they don't link up to the state for possibly 48 hours. So if they're tested by the state, the local health department knows immediately. So we would get that information immediately. This lady yesterday, she was not even tested. She went to Halifax, didn't get tested at all because she didn't meet the actual criteria to be tested. Had it been a positive patient, we would have known immediately, well, we would have known today that that patient tested positive. Negatives, we don't hear about, so they just kind of go away. But yeah, they are, and if they know about it, so if they're on this list of however many people have it, I think it's 6 right now that are confirmed, we have a blurb in our dispatch notes, and I just got a phone call for anybody that's going out on flu-like symptoms, which we just had one while I was here. I got a call from dispatch saying, your unit is responding to a flu-like symptoms call, just so you know. So we're working through it. We've got another conference call with the health department and the EOC and Dr. Springer on Wednesday. Fire chiefs meet tomorrow to go through and kind of fine-tune our requests. So we do know. We'll know after the fact, though, like
So
within 24 hours.
let me play this out to the next level of our first responders, whether it's police, fire, or the transport agency, comes in contact with the patient with flu-like symptoms, and they get tested, and 4 days later, we find out that they're COVID-19 positive.
The patient or the
Patient.
we would know that the next day.
Okay, oh, it's that quick now?
Yeah.
Okay,
I thought the testing takes 4 days. Is that
We were told it was the next day. We were getting.
okay?
okay, so once we find out that the patient tested positive, does that trigger an automatic quarantine of their first
It
responder?
triggers a self-quarantine, yes,
So I'm going to lose employees for 14 days?
possibly. They still weren't clear on if that test comes back negative, or if the test comes back negative. So say Deltona had one today, the 3 responders on the truck all came down at the exact same time with the exact same symptoms. They were told to self-isolate, and this was this morning.
Wow.
Well, when they get the results back from the patient that they transported, if that patient's results are negative, does that mean those people kick off of self-quarantine? And they don't have the answer to that yet. So there's a whole lot of stuff still up in the air that we don't know the answers to, and hopefully by Wednesday we'll have all the millions of questions answered, and we'll only have 500,000 unanswered.
Did you say that Espanola call was yesterday?
It was yesterday.
So the sheriff released some information on what cities were being watched, and suddenly
It was on the,
yesterday,
conference call today.
so suddenly yesterday, the Holly Hill popped up as one.
That's Espanola, where we go to, is in the county. So it's not.
Okay,
the city
so
of
they
Hollywood.
wouldn't
We
have-
just respond to it for Volusia County.
Okay,
'Cause we're
okay,
closer.
all right. But I wonder if that was linked.
I have a
Yeah.
quick
Go ahead,
question.
Commissioner.
Isn't there a means for our emergency personnel? I mean, I don't know how much the mask will help at all with them responding, either police or fire.
Our goal is to not respond. And if we
So
do-
that's
if
what
we
we're
do
gonna
have
try not to
respond-
do.
If we do have to respond, we have certain guidelines from our medical director. In our case, we would be contacting that patient because we're only going there for flu-like symptoms.
Right.
We're not going there because of some dire medical
So we really
emergency that's
don't need to
preventing
be
them
there.
to have contact with us. So we would speak to them through the door. We would see if there's an underlying medical condition. If there is an underlying medical condition above flu-like symptoms, one of us is going to go in, and the rest are going to wait outside. They're going to do their survey and their assessment inside the house. And something new for this, we have the ability to refuse transport for the first time ever, where we can say, you will not be transported. So this lady yesterday, if it would have happened tonight, we could go to the lady yesterday who says, I want to go to Halifax to get a COVID-19 test. We could have said, you're not going to go in the ambulance. In the past, we were required to transport them because they simply asked to be transported. That's gone out the window as of today. So we could say, nope, we're going to notify the health department. The health department will be in contact with you.
Okay.
There are talks today of coming up with a kind of like a chase car where evac would provide field personnel in not a transport unit that could go on the flu-like symptoms call, and they would simply arrange for the health department to get in contact with that person, and that person never leaves their house. Give them a set of instructions. Here's what you do. This is not no underlying symptoms, no shortness of breath, no. I mean, if it's just the flu-like symptoms, you're fine staying at your house. Someone will be in contact
Okay.
with you. So that's where we're at today. We'll know more tomorrow, and we'll know more, even more on Wednesday.
All right.
Great, thank you, Chief.
And I won't jump to the police now. I'll wait.
Is there anything any commissioner wants to bring up while we're here? Yes.
I was contacted by some representatives from Heroes Hope, and they're here today. They called me Saturday. Their concern is feeding the school kids. We have 95% free and reduced kids at our Holly Hill School, and received an email from the school board today that they will be setting up bagged lunches. But my concern is it's from 10 to 12:30, a 2.5-hour window where if I'm a working person, I'm not going to take my lunch hour to go get a bag lunch for my kid. I called our principal, texted him. He's gravely concerned that they are distributing food on campuses, but not at our school.
Yeah.
Most of our kids are walkers or bikers. They gladly would participate. He's reached out to the district and is awaiting a response. But when you look at the list, it looks like it's a done deal. So I don't know what to tell these gracious volunteers here to do, or where to put them in touch with, but it's a concern that we have. 2 of our local businesses, I understand, are feeding kids for free. Gina's and Olive. Might be others, might be Sorrento's feeding kids for free. I don't know, but it is a concern. The good thing is that hopefully, this is spring break, and hopefully the parents have made arrangements to feed the kids that get the school breakfast and school lunch this week, which gives us 5 or 6 days to figure it out for next week. But I'm sure there's some hungry kids out there. I don't know what the answers are. I'm just bringing it to your attention, and these guys showed up here today, so
Do you know if UBIC is still carrying on their?
pantry hasn't been closed as of yesterday.
School's closed.
The school's closed.
Okay.
And, and that brings up a bigger issue.
Pantry,
Bunch of people are going to go vote tomorrow. How'd you like to be a poll worker?
right?
UBIC is one of our polling stations, so I mean it's a complicated issue, and I see the Heroes Hope people are chomping at the bit that
Yeah.
they were packing. According to Facebook, they packed a couple hundred lunches today from somewhere. I don't know what they did with them.
I'll let you come up if you keep it short.
I've got the answer.
Come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Michael Hoskins, Director for Heroes Hope, 315 Scotland Drive, Holly Hill, Florida. Thank you for hearing me today. I am not a person that sits around and waits for answers. I make things happen. I was delivered about 13,000 individual serving sizes today by an organization, and I am prepared to go out into the community and distribute these. I brought some for the police department and for the fire department that they will fit into their vehicles that they can distribute if a call comes in. They're very easy, so I have rice and beans that are, all you need is hot water. They're pre-cooked and then dehydrated, so they will cook up fast. I have oatmeal that will cook up fast, and I have macaroni and cheese that will cook up fast. They're all pre-prepared and then dehydrated, so you just add hot water. So even in the hotels, they can use them. They don't need a stove. They can be made prepared in a microwave. and they're in my garage right now. We did 200 and some odd sack lunches. My wife and I, this is how it all started. We took out of my retirement money and went and bought food to make sandwiches and pack up sack lunches. Because here, the big problem is that on that list, Holly Hill did get left off. We're at 94% free and reduced meals, and they got left off. And everybody's saying, bring those meals to us in Port Orange or in Ormond Beach, where they can come and drive through and pick them up. But what about the kids that can't get to those drive-throughs? As a kid, I relied on those free and reduced price lunches, and my parents had to work. There's no way I could just walk out to a community event to grab a meal if school was closed. And so I'm prepared to drive around in my truck all day if I have to and knock on doors and deliver meals. It would be great help if we had the police officers and the fire department on board with this, because these are really easy meals they can just throw in their trunk. Each packet has 4 servings in it. So I have an answer.
Hold on one second, Michael. Joe, is there anything, could we post it on our website or Facebook?
First of all,
Connecting people.
Commissioner Curry brought this to my attention, and I made a phone call to the schools, and I'm waiting to get a call back as to why Holly Hill School was left off. This is very honorable action that you're taking, but it presents a logistical concern for me. And I'd rather somehow coordinate this other than you just driving around. There's got to be a more effective and efficient way of handling that. I don't know what it is yet, but if you leave me with your name and number, I'll get it figured out.
I tried to leave my name and number downstairs, but I wasn't allowed to hand anything through the window. So I will give you my card right now if you'd like that.
Yeah. So give me a day to figure it out, and I'll see what we can do. Where did these meals come from? Are they?
So the name of the organization that brought these meals to me is called Hunger Fight, and they're all prepackaged, boxed up, very easily stackable. They're in sealed packets, so they're even easy if I need to go home and decontaminate them, I will.
How do I know these are? And I'm going to sound horrible. Tony's laughing because he's going, that's you. How do I know these are good meals? They're not contaminated meals. They're
well, I guess you don't. But how do I know that every kid out there is going to eat? And at some point,
I can almost promise you every kid
sure.
out there is not going to eat.
Yeah.
Well, I can't promise you is that what we're giving them is safe, and that's where if we get behind.
Well, this is a legitimate organization that you can research that has been doing this for. I mean, in Utah they just did over 1 million meals and served them into the community. They just did a big event in Georgia. Technically, they weren't supposed to bring them to us because we didn't do an event here in Holly Hill, but they saw that we're actually doing it. I mean, I don't have the money to go out and buy food for all the kids, but I don't care. I'll go hungry before they do.
Right.
And so they saw that, and so they brought them to us and said, I'm not supposed to give them to you because you didn't do an event in Holly Hill, but we're trying to get into Holly Hill. Here's some food. Get it out there.
All right, well, give me till tomorrow. Give me till
Well, I'll still be serving them and finding places to put them until then. Just
but if I can get it
aware.
logistically coordinated where these students or the parents of these students or children of any age can somehow filter through a pickup kind of scenario.
And that's the problem, though, is getting them to a pickup spot.
Right.
Not all of them are going to be able to access a pickup
We
spot.
maybe have to do multiple locations.
And
So,
and I'll be working on it also, so maybe we can brainstorm something.
okay, that's fair.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Vice Mayor, you still have the floor.
Yeah, just one more thing. Trying to plan for the worst and hope for anything else, but we just canceled our next commission meeting. How logistically, Joe, if this thing is still the same or worse, do we have to have another special? Does the mayor need to call a special meeting to then cancel the next meeting if it needs to be canceled, or how
It seems
does that
kind of
happen?
silly to hold a meeting to cancel a meeting.
I know, but I know, but we're the government, so we're caught up in our own
The
rules.
mayor has the
sometimes.
right to cancel a meeting. You're only required to have one meeting a month. So the mayor has the ability to say you're canceling the second meeting in March. You have the ability to cancel the first meeting in April, which Ormond canceled. Ormond is canceled until, I think, April 21st.
And that's my. I don't know if it'd be prudent to plan for that, and then if it's better, we hold the meeting. But I'm sure it would help staff in preparing for that next meeting that may never happen. If we planned to cancel the next 2 in a row, and if some pressing matter came up and this thing instantly vaporizes, we can have our meeting. But I just think to plan for a meeting, I think it's best to prepare for the worst, and 4 weeks down the road, we should have a lot better understanding of what's happening here.
And I believe that's a good idea, because that would then free up those employees instead of trying to work on an agenda for a meeting we are probably not going to have. They can be working on issues of today's current events.
I mean, if something pressing comes up and a land use has to be scheduled for this and that to hit a deadline, the mayor can always call a special meeting. So I don't know, whatever the pleasure of the commission, I'm just throwing it out there, just trying to
Makes sense.
plan.
So let's see, the first meeting in April is the 14th, second meeting is the 28th. I would like to keep it open to be able to have the meeting. Maybe in 2 weeks, we find out, hey, this is really starting to go down, hopefully, and then we can still hold a meeting. But then certainly, I can cancel it on a dime if that's not the case.
You have to give 12-hour notice.
12-hour notice?
That's for your charter.
And we'd give much more than that. But, Joe, what do you think of just canceling the first meeting of April? Or should we play it by ear?
I just don't think it's going to be any better in 2 weeks. It's
Yeah.
it's an arbitrary date that
gonna get
someone
worse
has picked.
Well,
It's going to be worse.
The problem is a large majority of people are not listening to the social distancing as they should be, and that's what's going to continue this increasing. Once we all figure out social distancing is what we need to do for a little while, then I believe you will see a decline, but not until then.
People are treating this like it's a hurricane coming next week. The problem is,
We
it's
don't
not
know.
going to come just next week.
Good point.
So
Sorry to
there's
hear.
been a you've heard, run on toilet paper. The grocery stores are, they're being wiped out of food, although we've been told there's no shortage of trucks going back and supplying these supermarkets. Now there's word that gas is going to become short. So we got to think smart, not hoard what you don't need. You taking 10 cases of toilet paper to prevent someone from getting one is not the right thing to do. These supermarkets have indicated that they're going to continue their supplies up. As long as the supplies are there, they're going to continue to do it. So as for the meeting, I don't have a problem keeping the meeting on the schedule and then canceling it. It doesn't matter one way or the other to me. We cancel the next meeting on March 24th, that's fine. The April meeting, you will find that business is going to slow down. People are going to slow down. Business is going to slow down. People are not coming in here to do a land use change during this time period. There's not a lot of public hearing items that are going to be coming forward.
Right, and that actually brings up a big point, though. If we did have a public hearing, then it goes to your point of canceling the meeting, because you want as many people for that public hearing here, as opposed to if we still have the ban on only 10 people in a room.
Yeah, and we don't
We
want
can't have
that.
anybody here. We do live streaming, but they can't comment from live streaming, so
Problem.
that's the
I
problem.
mean, I think other cities are holding people outside of the chambers and having them come in 1 or 2 at a time when items come up.
But the problem
But the problem is there's
outside the
20 of
chamber.
them in the room over
Yeah,
there.
they're even closer, right.
So I don't care. I'm just bringing, I just wanted to understand the policy for canceling the meeting. I would hate for us to wait to the last minute to cancel it.
Yeah.
So either way, I'm just.
Well, what if we did this, John? About a week ahead, Joe and I will look at, what's on the agenda and what the circumstances around, and then we'll make
Yeah,
a call.
I mean, the agenda is typically set to Wednesday or Thursday after our next meeting. So we're gonna know
Right.
a week from now, 8 days from now, when we've canceled our next meeting, whether we should have another meeting. I just wasn't sure what the policy was to cancel it, so.
I think let's just go ahead and let's not cancel it today, but let's wait a week or so, see how this all plays out, and then we'll go ahead and cancel it if needed, especially if there's only going to be able to be 10 people here, because that's taken up by staff almost immediately. So,
And I don't know that that's a law. I just think
no,
that's
it's
a
just
recommendation.
guidance, right?
And then you put on your lawsuit happy hat and you think, well, if we violate that policy and someone gets sick here and they go home and infect their grandmother and their grandmother dies, then they sue the city because we didn't
Right.
cancel the meeting, and it's just
Right.
crazy.
That was a fiasco with Bike Week, right, Joe?
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Anything
Mr. Mayor.
else? All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curry?
Yes, so we already covered the water utility bills. We covered the K through 8. I'd like to make sure, since I've already discussed with the police or the fire chief, I'd like to discuss with the police department what measures they're able to take and what needs they may or may not have for protecting our officers.
Deputy Chief, would you like to comment?
Would you come up and let us know,
Spoke
please?
with the chief this morning. He can give you a little update about what we spoke about.
Deputy Chief Miller, Holly Hill Police Department. City manager and I and Chief Aldridge and also Lieutenant Yates and I, we talked about some things we're doing, especially with the records department. We've suspended our fingerprinting. We're limiting the interaction of personal information coming through the door. Our officers, we're giving them sanitizer. We've directed them to have limited contact with people. We've suspended our traffic enforcement that the FDOT grant. And basically, we want them to talk to people outside, not in the lobby or in their house unless it warrants it. As Chief Bland said, we'll know if someone is a documented COVID carrier, and at that point, the dispatcher will let them know, and they will contact a member of the command staff to receive further direction.
Yeah, it's being documented in your calls as well, right? The
The whole
information.
system, from what I understand.
I don't know about the fire side, but from what I understand,
Right.
your system, it's being documented in the calls. Okay, so we feel good about we don't have any needs that the commission needs to hear about
No,
for this?
not at this time.
Okay.
Great.
The jail, I guess there was a rumor going around that the jail's not taking people. They are taking people, but if they're on the CDC list and they're exhibiting, the COVID-19 symptoms, then they're going to take a look at that. But they are taking people.
Actually, Forrest took a prisoner out today, and they actually did the
Right.
temperature thing on him, and I don't think he was on any list or anything. So I think they're probably have bumped up what they're
They
doing
are.
a little better.
They are, and I talked to the director this morning because their staff wasn't, their information wasn't being communicated properly because that correctional officer told our police officer, lucky you didn't have a fever, the arrestee, or you would have had to ship them out to the nearest hospital and get tested. According to the director out there, that's not true. They bring in the nurse and they go into more standard things or more questions and so
Right.
forth. So.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Just a couple more things. And Joe, I wanted to make sure that we have enough sanitizing supplies, or we're at least ordering what we can.
We've got supplies on hand. Antoine has been speaking with janitorial companies that if we need to bring in a third party because we had an exposure, confirmed case within any one of our buildings, we'd bring in a company to come in and they would decontaminate or sanitize the facilities. We looked at a couple of other pieces of equipment. Some are very, very expensive, the tune of $16,000 to $18,000. I looked at other equipment that's a couple $100 that we may be able to use in certain areas if we need to for decontamination. So as of now, our supplies are okay.
Okay, I'm just concerned that if we're still bringing people into the building, that our staff we're taking every measure possible.
Like I said, the only reason-
Keeping our staff safe and healthy and,
As much as we possibly can.
Okay.
But the only reason somebody needs to come into this building is to submit documents into the planning department or to pay a utility bill. Well,
right,
if we make it so that you pay your utility bill in the Dropbox, because we're not going to turn off your water if it's a day late, then I could eliminate the number of, and I'll talk to Stella about the timing of that, but, you know, I don't want to close City Hall. I don't think we're there yet to close the doors of City Hall and say the public's not allowed in.
right. But I do want to make sure that we're taking every measure possible because they're stuck here. They have no choice. We're saying you've got to work, so we should be protecting them as much as possible. I want to also make sure of any measures that need to be taken for our citizens and businesses. My concern is, right off the top of my head, any businesses that have a large volume of customers. I mean, now they're saying 10 or less. We need to look at that and see if we as a government need to look at putting a measure in place to ensure there's compliance with that.
That's
It's
going
going
to
to shut Publix down.
That's going to be a tough one.
They are?
No, if you limit it
Oh,
to 10 people in a
yeah.
building, that's shutting Publix down.
Some states are trying to close bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I like that they're doing is they're shutting the dining. They're not shutting them for takeout, pickup, delivery, but it's the inside dining that they're talking about shutting down. Now, Commissioner Danio could tell us if he thinks that's an issue right now, or, I mean, you're in the business.
I mean, you know, we have delivery, we don't have a drive-through, but, you know, I mean, I've heard all, you know, the big chains are doing the drive-through, cutting out the dining and stuff. I've heard today Massachusetts issued a bar and restaurant.
Right.
So, I mean,
By all
can we
means-
do it, or do we have to be regulated by the government?
I don't think we as a city do anything like that unless it comes at the county level.
Okay.
And the county may be saying, we're not going to do that unless it comes from the state level. But it makes no sense for the city of Holly Hill to order the shutdown of any businesses if somebody's going to cross the border into Ormond or Daytona to do the same business.
Right.
So it makes no sense. But this is where I think that all of the cities within the county and all of the counties within the state need to communicate with each other so that we're doing the same thing.
Amen.
And we're not. What happened on Friday, I think, was horrible.
Right.
So we need to start communicating and doing the same thing and enforcing the same restrictions so that it's consistent. And the public knows the conditions in this city are going to be the same conditions in another city.
Was the county on the phone call with the other cities today?
Jim Judge is on the call, but the county manager
Did
is
you
not.
express your frustration with what happened on Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Because the county had to have known as well, because they were with them. So,
There's always a level of deniability that they were
Right.
there to announce a declaration of local state of emergency, and then the announcement with what took place in the city of Daytona Beach came after. Those are the kind of decisions that shouldn't be made at a press conference without the surrounding jurisdictions knowing what's happening.
Right.
That's my opinion.
I
Pisses
agree.
people off, I don't care.
Well, I think
I
unless
agree.
there's objection, this commission is right behind you, Joe. It was frustrating for me to hear too. So it could have really hurt us. So
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
All right. I don't want to hurt any businesses, so don't think that. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that needs to be done to help protect our businesses and citizens.
The managers are going to have a conference call every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. So every other day, I'll kind of have an update of what the status is, what may be changing, not changing, what's being enforced, and we'll just kind of stay the course with what most of the other cities are doing.
Okay. And can you check to see if there's any permits for any gatherings that the city has issued for here recently
No, the only thing that
of
we
10
have,
or more?
we have
Joe.
events that take place at Seca Hall.
And the art
Seek-
show's postponed.
Yeah, well,
Well, the art show is not yet formally been canceled, but
Postponed, right?
it will be, yeah, it will be postponed, it'll be rescheduled. Sika Hall is a Council on Aging feeding location, so I'm going to have to talk to Council on Aging to see how they're going to handle it, especially with the senior population being the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then everybody, there's no sense in us opening up Sika Hall for gatherings and putting people at risk.
What about like the park pavilions and stuff, if someone has a
that's what I was talking.
family reunion with 100 people out there?
Well, I don't think we ever get that many, but I'll find out from Public Works how
We're
many.
talking 10, that's not,
Yeah, that's why I want to make sure we don't have any outstanding permits where people are going to use the park for an event
Well, you
of 10 or more.
You cancel somebody's permit because they wanted to rent a pavilion is not going to stop them from coming there.
Right. But does it negate maybe our, any responsibility that we would have if someone came down and then said, well, the city let us do it on
They'll
their
sue us
property?
anyways unless you shut the parks down with it.
Yeah.
But I'll
Okay.
look into the
And-
number of
And are you going to keep us in an email loop about the feeding?
yeah, I'll let you know
okay.
whatever I find out. I'll keep you in the loop. I don't
Okay.
want to inundate you with the number of emails. We get emails on COVID-19 from everybody from the local bank to FPL. There's too much
Oh,
information.
I get a ton of them.
Too much. And it just becomes overwhelming that what's happening is you start to delete it.
Yep.
And a message is going to come across that you needed to read and you deleted it. So I don't want to overwhelm you with information that you're going to delete it and then you come to me and you ask me something. I say, I sent it to you. You say, well, you sent me 50 things. Well, I don't want to send you 50. I want to send you only what's important.
Right.
Okay.
Commissioner Day?
I mean, this is unprecedented for sure. I mean, but, at the end of the day, we're going to get through it. Just, people just need to just kind of, I wouldn't say relax, but not get overworked up and just have some common sense. Sometimes common sense isn't so common. But, I appreciate, the staff and everybody kind of staying on top of things. And we just, like Joe said, stay the course and just have a little faith. So we're not in control, but we'll get through it.
Amen. Commissioner Johnson?
A couple of concerns I have is this week, everyone should already be planned for what the kids are doing because it's been a long-term plan for this week. There shouldn't be a shortage of kids not having food this week. Now, next week's a different story. They didn't know about it until a couple of days ago, but there's got to be some kind of way to communicate with them to see which kids need something and where to take it to and make sure they get it and all. And another concern is if it's 10 people or less, all the daycares have to be shut down. Is that correct? All the daycares?
Boys and Girls Club just closed.
Huh?
The Boys and Girls Club just closed.
Yeah.
And the daycares, what do the people do that have to work? What do they do with the kids and all that?
The kids are not,
Main concern with me. And the biggest concern I think is everybody has is the unknown and the trust. You don't know what's going to happen. It's like when you're going into something in the military, you don't know what's over the next hill. Once you get there, you feel better because then you know for sure. It's an unknown. And the thing about it is everybody's got to communicate the right direction, the same direction, because when the county chairman and the sheriff, they disagree and they say, well, he says this, and then he says he don't agree with him and he does that, and people lose their trust and all. So that makes it more of an unknown. So you need to make sure, once people all get on the same page, they know what's happening, they know what direction to go in and all, then it's going to take place and smooth over a lot. But I think we need to plan on, this is the middle of March, there may not be no more school this year. This might go up into June or something. You have to kind of plan for that and hope it doesn't happen. I hope people will get on top of it in another week or so and know for sure what's happening. But the main thing is right now is the unknown, the uncertainty, and the not trusting the people that are telling you something. I don't trust when another country says they do this and they do that. You don't know for sure whether to give you the correct information or not. So your government needs to feed you the correct information so people can get on board and not use it on a political year, on an election year, and not use it to your advantages one way or the other. And that makes it more of not trusting them or something. So I think after another week or so, and people understand more about what it is and where it's gonna go, I think it's gonna be, some of the unknown will be out of the way. That's the main concern. But the main concern I have right now is, what are the people gonna do that have to work? What are they gonna do with their kids to be taken care of when they have to go to daycares to do it all? What are they gonna do with them? I can understand this week is okay, they already planned for it, but let's start planning for next week and maybe until the end of the school year, you know what I mean? The kids are the main concern right now with me. Get them fed too, good idea.
I hear you. Is there any other further comment from the commission? Yeah,
One
Vice
thing I
Mayor.
thought, Joe, not trying to play armchair quarterback, but what Commissioner Curry said about protecting the employees, and you mentioned utility billing and planning. But I'm just thinking, when people enter the building, they go to the police department, there's a glass thing there, and the clerk talks to them, and they go to utility billing, there's a glass thing there. But if they come to the city clerk's office, they just walk right in. If they come to code enforcement, they walk right in. They come to your office, they walk right in. Any thought to limiting access, like their glass doors? We could put a sign on all the glass doors, go to utility billing. There's usually, aren't there three windows there? Usually only 2 of them are open. If maybe we could rearrange and, 2 hours a day, a different employee staffs that 3rd window, because they're semi-protected. What can I help you with, ma'am? I need to see planning. Do you need to drop off papers? Yes. Okay, slide it through here. Then they don't talk to the planning department. But if they need to talk to the planning department, they can contact Mr. Walker. Or if they need to talk to someone in code enforcement. Code enforcement people are here all the time. Well, I'm in compliance. Could you let them know? Yes. And just another barrier might be most helpful, that there are other times when people come here and what makes this city hall great is open door philosophy. I don't know of any other city hall in the country where you can walk in the front door, make a left and a right, and you're in the city manager's office. There's nothing stopping you. But at this is crazy times, and I think maybe that might make sense if we could put another layer, a stopgap there. Lock Val's door. She's in there. She's working.
She can talk to him through the
She
glass.
can talk to him through the glass. But I don't know. I'm
How do
just.
we get them to pay the bill outside? Couldn't we post something?
The problem is not paying the bill outside. The problem is a lot of people come in to pay cash. We don't want them dropping cash in the bin outside. Anything else, credit cards can be processed online. Dropping a check out there can be done.
Money
through
order.
Some of our other online pay opportunities. So it's mostly the cash payments, and a lot of people coming to pay at the last minute. So they're walking through the door, pay at the last minute, and if it goes outside of the box, it may be a day or two late.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, this is not a hurricane coming in 3 days that's going to be gone in a couple of hours. Don't know how long it's going to last. Nobody knows how long it's going to last.
The worst for it gets better.
Well, maybe if there's a press release, or you do a quick release of something, we could mention asking people to refrain from coming to City Hall unless it's absolutely necessary,
Try to make
try
calls
to
or
do their
payments online.
business in another way.
Yeah, we should do a release like that. Just straight from our Facebook page.
I gotta first iron out the details. but-
Yeah.
And these are all management decisions that we'll leave to Mr. Forte's
Right, but,
discretion.
I
but
mean, can-
just throwing crazy ideas out
If,
that.
if we could just send out a message once everything's ironed out, I think it would be a good idea.
Just to encourage people, if they can call instead of come in and talk, if they can pay online instead of come in, it's not a bad idea. It's worth a Facebook post.
I figured you'd like that.
Yeah, I don't need to be involved with it, but
That's
Vice
it.
Mayor?
That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner, you had something?
No, I'm good now.
Okay, all right. Daniel had the quote of the day today. We're going to get through this. So with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
And I
Meeting
would,
is adjourned.
and I would,
Meeting is adjourned.
and I would,
Meeting is adjourned.
and I would.
Meeting is adjourned.
And I would,
Meeting is adjourned.
and I would.
Meeting is adjourned.